Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right in, shall we? Today we're heading out to the park to join three seriously curious friends. We've got Pip, a boy rocking some shiny red sneakers, Barnaby, a fluffy brown bear with a serious love for carrots, and Zara, this incredibly clever little fox. We're going on a grand playground adventure together to unpack the fascinating science behind weight. We'll be observing the physical world and testing the very forces that literally keep us pinned to the ground. Let's do this.
Okay, so the whole thing kicks off when Pip stumbles upon this mysterious cardboard box. It's wrapped up in a bright blue ribbon, just sitting there near an old oak tree. Inside, resting on some crinkly green tissue paper, is a rather strange metal contraption and a note. And honestly, finding this brings us to a really foundational question. What exactly makes things heavy and what makes things light? I mean, it sounds super simple on the surface, right? But as we're going to see, it actually has some incredible scientific layers to it.
So, Barnaby the bear pulls this note out of the box, and it's written in sparkly green crayon, which is a nice touch. It reads, "To find the hidden treasure, you must discover what makes things heavy and what makes things light." So, this isn't just your everyday game of tag. It's a full-on scientific challenge. To unlock whatever this hidden reward is, our trio literally has to crack the code of weight. And to pull that off, they first need to figure out exactly what those words mean.
Starting right over at the sandbox, Zara the fox takes the lead and sets up the very first experiment. She picks up this tiny, snowy white bird feather. She has Barnaby blow just a gentle little breath of air, and you know what happens? The feather just dances and twists right up into the sky before floating lazily back down to Earth. So, that gives us our first working definition. When something weighs very, very little and it's able to float, drift, or easily rise in the air on just a breeze, we call that light.
But right on the flip side of that, right after testing the feather, Zara walks over and grabs this big, round, gray stone near the sandbox. And she has to use both of her paws for this. Her ears are literally twitching from the massive effort it takes just to get it off the ground. When she finally lets go, boom! It drops to the grass with this massive, heavy thud. It took actual muscle power to lift. So now we can easily define heavy as an object that weighs a lot and pulls down strongly toward the ground.
Right. So now that they have the basics down, they need a real way to test their playground discoveries, right? No more just guessing. They take that mysterious metal contraption out from the box. It's got this red handle connected to two hanging plastic buckets, and they hang it from a sturdy branch on the oak tree. Zara, being the clever fox she is, explains that this is a balanced scale, and it operates on one golden visual rule that we're going to see a lot. When an object is heavier, it pulls the scale down, and when it is lighter, it goes up. Pip and Barnaby are all over this. They want to test this golden rule immediately. Pip gathers a whole handful of fluffy yellow dandelions and drops them into the left bucket. Meanwhile, Barnaby takes this chunky, solid wooden building block and plunks it into the right bucket. And clunk! The right bucket drags Ray down low to the grass, while the dandelions are left just floating high up in the air on the left. The scale is giving us a crystal clear visual comparison here. That solid wood is way heavier than the soft, fluffy flowers.
Okay, here's where things get super interesting. Over by the community garden, the friends decide to test a magnificent juicy red apple against a standard green maple leaf. Now, the apple pulls the scale all the way down, while the leaf just flies right up. But why? Well, it's because the apple is packed absolutely tight with sweet, heavy fruit juice and crisp meat. The leaf, on the other hand, is mostly flat, thin, and filled with all these tiny microscopic air channels.
So far, we've seen that bigger items have generally been heavier. Our explorers head over to a towering pine tree and decide to really test this assumption. Pip chucks a giant, spiky pine cone into one bucket, and Zara carefully places a tiny little acorn into the other. Swish! Clack! Just as Barnaby predicted, just by eyeballing it, the giant pine cone easily outweighs that tiny acorn. So, it definitely seems like size is a pretty fantastic clue when you're trying to guess an object's weight, doesn't it?
But, before we get a little too confident in that rule, we really have to pause and wonder for a second. A passing squirrel asks for his bouncing ball back, and Pip suddenly realizes that this big blue rubber ball is actually much larger than the apple they tested earlier. So let's ask the question, does a bigger size always mean a heavier weight? What do you think is actually going to happen when they put a massive object and a smaller object on the scale at the same time? Well, the scale is about to reveal a huge scientific surprise. Pip puts the small red apple in the right bucket and that massive blue rubber ball in the left bucket. And clunk! The much smaller apple drops like an absolute stone, while the giant rubber ball just floats upward. The friends suddenly realize a major scientific truth here. Yeah, the rubber ball might be huge, but it's hollow. It's just full of invisible air. The apple is much smaller, sure, but it is incredibly densely packed.
And we can actually test this whole idea of what's inside an object even more clearly. Pitt pulls 2 identical plastic water bottles right out of his backpack. They are exactly the same size, exactly the same material, but one is full of water and the other is just empty. When they place them on the scale, the full bottle hits the grass with a huge thud, while the empty one flies straight up. It turns out water has real physical mass. It adds heavy weight inside the bottle, whereas the empty one is just holding light air.
Which brings us to an absolutely crucial discovery: density. Over at the playground toy chest, Barnaby decides to test a smaller, solid wooden spoon against a much larger, floppy plush bunny. The scale tilts slowly and, boom, the solid wooden spoon easily outweighs the giant plush bunny. Think about it. Even though the bunny takes up way more space and looks way bigger, it's really just stuffed with fluffy, lightweight cotton. The wood, however, is dense, solid matter.
Just as they are really mastering these concepts, Park Ranger Martin walks by pulling a red wagon and offers them what I can only call the ultimate heavy test. He has this massive canvas bag filled with 30 solid wooden square blocks. When he heaves this heavy bag into the left bucket, you can actually hear the sturdy oak branch creak and bend. The bucket just smashes into the grass with a bounce. It proves that when you add many heavy things together, their mass combines, creating a super heavy downward pull.
Okay, so now they have a hugely lopsided scale on their hands. The left side is literally pinned to the ground, and the right side is flying high up in the leaves. To fix this, they're going to have to carefully stack counterweights on the opposite side. First, Barnaby tosses in 2 large stones. Nothing happens. Zara steps up and adds 3 more stones. Still nothing. Finally, Pip grabs a dense, heavy metal toy truck with rubber wheels and drops it into the right bucket with the stones. Sway, swish, click. The buckets magically shift. The left bucket rises, the right bucket lowers, and they stop exactly perfectly in the middle. Both buckets are hanging there at the exact same height. And this is when Zara reveals the scientific term for this beautiful moment of harmony. She calls it equilibrium. It's a fantastic big science word that just simply means the 2 sides of a scale weigh the exact same amount and are perfectly level with each other. And achieving that perfect equilibrium triggers a magical ding-dong-ding coming from the wooden box. Inside, they find a shiny gold star sticker and a golden note celebrating their success. The note praises them for figuring out that heavy pulls down, light floats up, and most importantly, that size doesn't always tell the whole story. By balancing the scale in perfect harmony, they finally earned the ultimate reward, the official title of Master Playground Explorers. So as they pack up their testing station and start walking home beneath this beautiful sunset, they play a rapid-fire guessing game just to really cement all this new knowledge. They correctly identify that a giant steel slide is heavy while a tiny little leaf is light. A solid leather soccer ball is heavy, but a thin plastic bubble is light. And this one's my absolute favorite. Even though a cloud in the sky is gigantic, it's light enough to float, whereas a tiny solid pebble is heavy and sinks right to the ground. Now, before we wrap up this explainer, I want to emphasize that science doesn't just happen at the playground. Here are some fantastic hands-on ways you can test density, mass, and equilibrium right in your own home. If you have a kitchen scale, grab 5 small toys right now and predict which is the heaviest. Or try the hand test by holding a soft pillow in one hand and a thick book in the other with your eyes closed. Or, do some water play in the sink to see which objects sink down like heavy stones and which float up like light feathers.
Finally, I want to leave you with a bit of wonder as you take these amazing concepts and apply them to the incredible world around you. Think about this. If heavy things pull down toward the earth and light things float up into the air, why do you think birds have light, hollow feathers instead of heavy stone wings? It really makes you think, doesn't it? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep weighing the world around you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and we will definitely see you next time.